Thank you guys so much for joining us today for our season finale, episode 30 altogether, episode 10 of season 3 today. And that's what we typically do with our seasons. We do about 10 episodes per season, then we take a month or 2 months off and come back to get prepped for the next season, because we want to have quality in over quantity in what we talk about here on the Biblicist podcast. But several announcements today, and I'm really excited. First of all, if you're a normal listener, like you're always on here, if you didn't know this, you should know this already. But if you're listening on Podbean or on Apple Podcasts, we're also on YouTube now. And so if you haven't yet, check it out on YouTube if you'd like that platform better. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet on YouTube. Hit that notification bell, like the videos. All those things will help get the content out to more people. So if you like the content, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, like the videos, and share them, of course. If you're on Apple Podcasts, if you haven't put a review on yet, go ahead and throw 5 stars on there if you like the material, and that also helps get that out to more people as well. And I love communicating with you guys, and sometimes I forget to mention it, but we have an email, thebiblicistpodcast@gmail.com. You also can leave comments if you join onto podbean.com. As well. You can also leave comments on the YouTube page as well. And so I love interacting with you guys, and so please feel free to do all those things. So those are things that have been there and been available: the email, the comments, YouTube, Podbean, Apple Podcasts. Those are all the different ways you can get connected here on the Biblicist podcast. So none of that was new, and just want to make sure that all of you guys know those things. So here's a couple of announcements. If I did my job well, which we'll find out. A couple of things. There should now be a Biblicist podcast Facebook page and a Biblicist podcast Instagram page. Once again, whatever platform you prefer on that. That's another great way to stay connected, for us to have continued dialogue, but also a place where you can create even more content other than the normal weekly show that we do on Mondays. And so I'm hoping to have more content available on Facebook and Instagram. And so if you, like I said, if I did my job correctly, look down into the description. There should be links to Facebook, links to Instagram, so you can join in and follow those pages. And hopefully they're there. If they're not there, they'll be there soon, but it should be there, I hope. So check those out, follow those pages for another great way to find content and to stay connected. So I'm really excited about that. So please go there right now, check it out. Second of all, going into season 4, all right, here when we do this, when we go to season 4, we're going to create a second show. So the Monday show is going to stay the same. The Biblicist podcast show is going to stay the same, but I'm going to do a better job of keeping that content down to about 15 to 20 minutes. We're just diving into Scripture, answering maybe some tough questions, and diving into passages or books of the Bible. We're going to keep that the same on Mondays, but if you've noticed, we've done some other things. We've done some apologetics on the show in the past. I think a really long episode talking about Rhett from I can't even remember the name of the show now. Good Mythical Morning. We talked about Rhett leaving the Christian faith, and we had a whole long episode about that, and we've done a couple of longer interviews. But what we're going to do is on Mondays, that'll stay the same, except it'll just be 15 to 20 minutes of diving into Scripture. But we're going to start a second show on the channel, on podcasts, on YouTube, all the same, on Thursdays. And we're going to call that show Live the Bible. And that show is strictly going to be interviews. It's going to be conversations, whether in person or on the phone. We're going to talk with people, kind of like the last 2 weeks where we talked with Jared Coburnat from Simple Culture. And we also talked to my pastor friend, Roger Powell. And so these were great conversations, and we want to continue that dialogue where on Thursdays we talk about living out our faith. And so we take what we talk about on Mondays, And just as we're following Christ and following his word and discussing that and having conversations on Thursdays on the show about what it means to live out our life on mission. And so really excited about that second show where we can dedicate time to have a conversation, where we can have a little more freedom in our time as well in those conversations. And so stay tuned for season 4. Like, I'm super excited about season 4, having the Monday show back like usual, but then also starting a second show on Thursdays, Live the Bible interviews. Super stoked about that. So that's another good reason to get onto Facebook and Instagram, so that way you can also see when the season is going to be starting. I'll have some announcements on there and updates of when that's going to happen and who we might be interviewing on there as well. So all of that information will be on Facebook and Instagram as well. So looking forward to that. With that being said, those are all the announcements today. I just want to encourage you with something on today's episode. I was reading in Jeremiah, and I came across this verse, Jeremiah 9:8, that said this: "One speaketh peaceably to his neighbor with his mouth, but in heart he layeth his wait." Someone who talks peacefully with his neighbor, but then in his heart, he's actually setting an ambush. He doesn't actually care. In fact, he looks at his neighbor as an enemy. Says one thing, believes something else. And immediately I thought, what are things that we talk about, but in our heart, fill in the blank? I say this to my friends, I say this to my neighbors, I say this to my enemies, but in my heart, here's what I actually think. I instantly thought of a couple other passages. James 2:15 through 17. "If a brother or sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto them, Depart in peace, be ye warmed and filled, notwithstanding ye give them not those things which are needful to the body, what doth it profit? Even so faith, if it have not works, is dead, being alone." You see, you say one thing, but in your heart, you really don't care, because you could have taken care of the need. 1 John chapter 3, 17 and 18. "But whoso hath this world's good, and seeth his brother have need, and shutteth up his bowels of compassion from him, how dwelleth the love of God in him? My little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth." It's a command here to say, hey, don't just say it, live it. And then I thought of Matthew 28, verses 28 through 31. "A certain man had 2 sons. And he came to the first and said, Son, go work today in my vineyard. He answered and said, I will not. But afterward he repented and went. And he came to the second and said likewise. And he answered and said, I go, sir, and went not. Whether of them did the will of his father?" One spoke up and said, I ain't doing that. He repented and went and did it. The other said, oh yeah, I'll do it, and didn't do it. He said one thing, but in his heart never intended to follow through. I don't want to be someone who's all talk. It never follows through. Talks about how I want to make a difference. Talks about how I want to live out my life biblically. Live a Christian life. But it's all talk. In my heart, what's going on in there? I say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do all these things by faith. I'm going to step out, live for God. But in my heart. You see, our call to faith is a call to action. Jesus said, follow me. Follow me. A call to follow Jesus. He doesn't just call us to faith, he calls us to follow. And our faith compels us to follow him. To follow him. Now, obviously, we could talk about a lot of things, but I just want to share some of my thoughts. We're called to love our families. called to love our families. Not just talk about how we're supposed to love our families. Not just have conversations with our friends about how we want to be a better dad, or a friend talk about how we want to be a better parent, a better mom, a better husband, a better wife. We're supposed to love our families. We're called to love the church. So much fighting over silly things in the church, but we're called to love the church. Love your fellow believers. Yes, help correct them when they're wrong, but also allow yourself to be corrected. And then be willing to agree to disagree on some things. Love the church. We're called to love our neighbors. Our neighbors, the people that we interact with, the people that we run into. Love our neighbors. And we're called to love our enemies. Those that hate us, those that use us. We're called to love them. Talk is cheap. We need to act on these things. There's too many families falling apart. Let's stop talking about how there's a problem in the family, in a sense. Like, we need to keep talking about it, but that's not good enough. Dads, step it up. Moms, step it up. Families, step it up. Don't just talk about the problem. Step up. Don't just talk about division in the church. Be a unifier. Be a peacemaker. Don't just talk about your neighbors. Go serve your neighbors. Don't just talk about your enemies. Take care of their needs. A wise man once told me, if you don't have a ministry outside of the pulpit, you don't have much of a ministry. Now, this was a pastor, and of course, that's what he's talking at. Context is pulpit. But when I think of the word pulpit for anyone who's listening or watching, is whatever your platform is, your social media platform, your friends that you connect with, your circle, whatever you speak out about. If all you ever do is post on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, if all you ever do is talk and complain to your friends, if all you ever do is talk, but you don't live the life you talk about, what you're doing isn't much of a ministry, isn't much of a service. I'd say this: if you don't have a ministry outside the pulpit, if you don't have a ministry outside of a platform, then ultimately you don't have any ministry at all. Because anybody can set up a camera, set up a mic, and talk. It's time to get up and get out and live the Bible.